Thank you for being here. And thank you to John for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
We've a great crowd. And thanks to the festival for having us too. And before I begin, I just have a little bit of housekeeping, which is that if anybody needs it, there is an induction loop available. So just so if anybody needs it, that's available. Okay, so we're going to have a chat about the singularities. And before we begin, I'm going to just read the biography of you that's in the back of the book. So John Banville doesn't need any introduction really, but I'll begin with the short bio that's in the back of the Singularities, which was published last year. So it says, John Banville, the author of 17 novels, has been the recipient of the Man Booker Prize, the James Tate Black Memorial Prize, the Guardian Fiction Award, the Franz Kafka Prize, a Lannan Literary Award for Fiction, and the Prince of Asturias Award for Literature, and he lives in Dublin. And I should introduce myself as well. My name is Cristín Leach, and I'm an art critic and an author. Okay, so as I said, you don't really need an introduction, and the crowd that's here this evening obviously are very familiar with your work. So that bio says you're the author of 17 novels, but I think that this book, The Singularities, is your 20th novel in your own name. Is that right, or have you also lost track?
I don't keep count. They stand behind me like my sins, you know.
And I know that you published a crime novel too after this one, so there's been another one since, The Lockup.
Yes, yeah.
So extremely...
I dashed them off. You know.
Dash them off, extremely prolific. But I'm interested in the two different styles, and we won't dwell on it, but I know that you write the crime novels in about 4 months, very, very quickly, essentially dashing them off. That's a good phrase. And that The Singularities took about 6 years to write, is that right?
It did take 6 years to write, and I shouldn't say I dash off the crime novels. As you know yourself, writing a book is a very difficult and painful process. It takes blood, sweat, and tears, mostly tears. Whether it's a crime novel, and I hate the notion of genre. For me, there's just good writing and writing that's not so good. I began to write crime novels because I had begun to read Georges Simenon. And I hadn't read him before that. I just assumed he was a pulp writer. But then my friend, the English philosopher John Gray, said, I should really read these books. And I was extraordinarily impressed. I think Simenon is one of the great literary figures of the 20th century. Of course, Paris being the snobbish place that it is, wouldn't give him the recognition that he was due. Every October, he used to say, those bastards in Stockholm, they've passed me over again. That they shouldn't have. He's a wonderful writer. So I'm making the point that I don't make a distinction between so-called crime fiction and the other kind. But I do work differently. Yes, it did take me nearly 6 years to write that book. But that's because it's written at a deep level of concentration. I have to sink deep into myself, way past my own depths until I cease to exist. I mean, the person you see here is not the person who wrote that book. He ceases to exist when I stand up from the desk. I don't know who he is. He doesn't know what he's doing, and I don't know what he's doing either. And that's as it should be. I mean, one should be, as Kafka said, I don't think as I write, I don't write as I should think, and everything goes on in deepest darkness. I think that's the way that art is made.
Does time pass differently when you're sitting at your desk and you're writing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always tell a little anecdote that years ago when I was writing a book and I was sitting in my workroom in the middle of the afternoon, my wife put her head in the door and said, I'm going to the shops. And she shut the door, and then she put her head in and said something else. And I said, I thought you were going to the shops. She said, I haven't been to the shops. And I had no sense of that time having passed. I mean, for all of us, time is elastic. That moment when you're about to bang into the back of the car in front of you, suddenly time slows down. So it's not just artists who have a different sense of time. But yes, but also it's a strange thing. I've written a couple of books. I wrote a Raymond Chandler pastiche, the wonderful title Black-Eyed Blonde, which was one of Raymond Chandler's discarded titles. If somebody told me 30 years ago that I would one day write a book called The Black-Eyed Blonde, I would have been astonished. But I wrote that, and then I also wrote a sequel to Henry James's The Portrait of a Lady, Mrs. Osmond. And I wrote those in a state of kind of hypnagogic trance, I think. I wrote a lot of the Henry James one when I was in Chicago. I was doing a symposium on Henry James at the university there. And I was living on campus. And if you've ever been to the campus of the University of Chicago, bring sandwiches and lots of drink, because there are no bars, and there's nothing there, absolutely nothing. So I would write all day, 8, 10 hours a day, and sometimes I would sit back and watch my handwriting, just watch it. I sometimes had the impression that if I went off and had a cup of coffee, I'd come back and another paragraph would be written. A very strange state. Neuroscientists now say that human beings are capable of inducing a state of self-hypnosis when you have a task to do that's similar to what one usually does, but slightly different, that one gets into a state of hypnosis in order to do it. And I was certainly in a state of hypnosis when I did those books. It's quite interesting. It's very interesting to sit outside yourself and watch yourself doing something. It's like, when you have a dream and you're dreaming, that sense where your sleeping self knows that this dream is going on. It was very like that.
Is there a different version of you doing the editing? Is that a first draft mode that you're in, or are you in that mode? Because some writers say, I write my first draft, like maybe a stream of consciousness, no judgment or whatever, then I have to put the kind of logical working hat on to do the editing part.
Oh no, my first draft is the last draft.
That's it?
I make every sentence as close to what I want it to be before I write it down.
So you're editing as you go in your head?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah. But yeah, your question is interesting.
Do you ever have to respond to edits from the publishers if a manuscript comes back, and then respond to that?
Yeah, my response is always shove off. I mean, look, I spent nearly 6 years writing that. If I only spend 4 or 5 months writing one of my so-called crime books, I still have given everything of myself to that book in those 4 or 5. And some kid in reject from a creative writing class is going to come and tell me what to do? No.
Let's talk a bit more about time then, and this particular book. So you said to me before we came on the stage that all of your books are in here, as in when you were writing, you've put elements of all of your books in here?
Yeah, yeah. That was meant to be my last book. I mean, the last words are full stop.
Yeah.
I meant it to be full stop. But of course, being the old trooper that I am, I'm already working on another one. But I wanted that to be a summation. I will never write a book like that again.
Okay.
I mean, I'm 70, whatever, 70 something, can't remember, late 70s, and to embark on a book that would take me that long, I'd be gaga before I was halfway through it. So I won't do that. But I will write something else.
I'm thinking about the fact that characters from your previous books are in this book, appear again, but also the fact that time doesn't exist as we know it in this book. And I wonder, could you talk a bit more about this? So we have Godley, who has passed away. He has a new theory of time. Now, I don't fully understand, actually, what the theory of time is that he's developed, but I know in the book there's a sentence which the narrator says, meanwhile, and then he says, of course, the word meanwhile is now redundant because of the reality we now live in. Can you cast a bit more light on the theory that Godley applied? Because in the book, what happens is mathematics professors lose their jobs at universities because this theory shatters everything. And my understanding is that there are multi-universes coexisting, or I'm not even really sure. Can you explain a bit more about how time is working and passing in the book?
Well, first of all, this is a very playful book.
Yeah.
It's serious, but it's not solemn, I hope. Solemnity is the death of art. But it is playful. I'm playing with time. I'm playing with... You know, when you get old like me, and you're an old novelist, and you've written, 5,000 novels, 499 of which is 4,099 one shouldn't have written, you can do what you like. I'm in late style now. So I was playing with the form, I was playing with the reader, and I developed this theory that my character, Godley, has discovered that the mere fact of thinking about mathematics, thinking about science, degrades the world. So all the mathematicians have been fired. In fact, there's a notion that they're going to exterminate them. Exterminate the mathematicians because they're degrading the world. And the world is going backwards. And already all mobile phones and laptops have gone. And he says, eventually, in other words, time is in reverse.
Yes.
And we will arrive at a stage where he says it won't even be an ape on the savannah with a stick. There'll be nothing.
The phrase is supra-time.
Super time, yeah.
Supra-time.
But I had a lot of fun doing it. I mean, I'm fascinated by modern physics.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by quantum theory. I'm fascinated by... For instance, do you know the concept of quantum entanglement? Quantum entanglement, do you know?
Vaguely.
Quantum
I'd love you to explain it to me.
Well, it can't be explained. Nobody understands it. It's very simply expressed. If you have two particles, one is red and one is blue, you separate them. You take the blue one to the other side of the universe, you change its color to red, this one will instantly change its color to blue.
Right.
There's an impossibility. Mm-hmm. But yet it happens. And it's used in your mobile phone, in your laptop, in all, because quantum theory is used a lot in modern technology. So obviously there is an entire version of reality that we know nothing of. It may be discovered in your lifetime. I doubt it'll be discovered in my lifetime. But it's absolutely fascinating because we know so little of the world. Our dogs, our cats can see in the dark. They can probably see gamma rays. They can probably see X-rays. Have you ever seen your cat or your dog sitting looking into the corner? And you think, what's it looking at?
Yep.
So there's a whole version of reality, and this is wonderfully exciting. I hope the world survives for long enough for new scientists to come along and discover another layer of reality. But that will not be the last layer of reality. There will always be, as somebody said, it's turtles all the way down, There will always be a new version of reality. And that's wonderfully exciting. What an adventure our lives have been as a species. I mean, we're a dreadful species. The worst virus the planet has ever known. We're on the way to destroying the poor thing, unless the poor thing turns around and finds a virus better than us. I had high hopes for COVID. I'm pinning my hopes now on avian flu. That'll be the one that will get rid of us. But it's been a wonderful adventure.
There's a dark absurdity in delving into all of these things, isn't there? I was going to ask you...
well, life is a process of dark absurdity, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask you what time the book is set in, but I think you've answered that. I think just speaking narratively and in terms of characters and the environment and the way the world of this book works, as you said, there's no air travel anymore, but there are these vacuum trains.
Vacuum trains. Well, the vacuum train, I got that from a film producer, a friend of mine, who told me that before 2008, there was a plan in place to build a vacuum train between Los Angeles and San Francisco, which would take 1 hour. You get onto this thing, and it's sucked in a tube at, I don't know how many light speed, between one city and another. And they've probably built it yet. Again, isn't that wonderful? I mean,
Amazing.
I mean, technology is awful in many ways, as historian is, but also the human ingenuity is extraordinary.
That's remarkable.
And, it may be that we'll be saved by nuclear fusion. They say it's 30 years away. I think it's about 10 years away. And we will have unlimited power. And as a friend of mine said to me, yeah, and cleaner bombs.
Yeah, in the book, there has been a war. Holland has beaten America in the war.
Has invaded. And
New York doesn't exist anymore.
New Amsterdam has taken back Manhattan. Yeah.
But I'm curious about how you use these things to tell us about the characters. So you've kept cigarettes, but not mobile phones. There are cars, but they don't run on petrol or diesel. And the things and the ways that the characters move around the countryside. So when I started reading, it's easy to presume we are in the now, A man has gotten out of prison. He's changed his name. He goes to an old friend and gets a car. And then he drives to this house. And so there are lots of things that seem old-fashioned in ways about it. The kind of illicit cars speeding down the country roads in this sports car, the cigarettes, the wine drinking. There's all these things that seem almost old-fashioned. And then there's this other world that butts up against it, which is so curious and interesting. But, did you make decisions about the shape of the world and the way time would or wouldn't have passed, or, what would be existing at this time, based on things that would illuminate things about your characters?
Oh, no, I made it up as I went along,
Did you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't plan these things.
There's
Art has to be spontaneous. It has to have inventiveness. Every day when you do it, it has to be something new. It has to be made new. It would be deadening to plan all these things. I mean, in my crime books, for instance, I'm writing a crime book at the moment, and I'm about 10 pages from the end. I still don't know who did it, and I don't care. I don't care. What does it matter?
So there's no plotting. There's no.
As Raymond Chandler said, I happen not to care who killed Professor Plum in the library with a lead pipe. Just don't care. That's of no consequence. What's of consequence is the quality of the writing, the quality of the imagining of a world, the summoning of a world into existence. It's an extraordinary thing. Somebody once asked Gore Vidal why he'd written some novel, and he said, because it wasn't there.
Well, they do say write the book you would like to read. Do you do that? Write the book you would like to read?
Oh, well, all writers do that.
Yeah.
We all write the books we want to read.
Yeah.
I wouldn't write a book I wouldn't want to read, would you?
No, I wouldn't. But you've also said you don't go back and read them.
Oh, no, I couldn't do that. No, that would be terrible. That would be like a dog returning to its vomit.
Fair enough. Can I ask you about the relationship between truth and fiction and storytelling? Because obviously the people who are aware of your previous work and know a bit about this book know the character of Mordaunt is Freddie Montgomery, who's appeared in other books and who's also based on a real life person. So for you, what's the relationship between truth, fiction, storytelling, or are you just extracting some things and then making a whole new character and world, or, and also I suppose I'm curious about how it might tie to your background as a journalist too, and facts and storytelling and all of that.
I was never really a journalist. I was a sub-editor. I mean, one of my editors who hated sub-editors, he defined us as people who change other people's words and go home in the dark.
Was that fun? Was that a fun job?
Oh, I loved it. My God, if somebody came along to me tomorrow and offered me a job as a sub-editor, I would go back and do it. It was wonderful fun. You didn't have to go out and, visit the burning cathedral or, talk to the grieving widow or any of that stuff. You just got their stuff and you changed it around. It's wonderful, wonderful. And we had such fun, such fun.
I might ask you a bit more about journalism and newspapers in a minute, but I suppose back to that thing about truth and fiction, you know, like...
Yeah, there is truth, there's fact, and then there's truth. And the two are not necessarily contingent or coterminous, whatever the word is. I remember when I was back in the 70s, I wrote a book based on the life of Copernicus, the astronomer Copernicus. And my late wife used to say to me, John, remember, fact is not truth. And it was a good motto to hold on to. The truth of art is not factual, but it is true. Now, don't ask me to define it. But I think anybody engaging with, horrible word, but engaging with a real work of art is engaging with truth. But it's not fact. I mean, all this is made up. And yet, in some strange way, it is true. And a work of art can't be a work of art unless it's true. You can't have a false work of art. If it's false, it's not a work of art.
Yeah.
That's one of the great values of art for our time, for any time.
Is that how you know when it's done, when it rings true? Is that how you knew
Oh God,
at the end
no,
of
it's
6
done,
years?
It's done when I'm tired of it.
It's done when you're tired of it?
I'm sick of it. I can't be doing with it anymore, just give it up. And Paul Valéry, the great French poet, said a work of art is never finished, only abandoned.
Well, yes.
And that's true.
That's true. The book starts with a definition, before it begins, of course, a definition of singularity. And it's the Chambers Dictionary.
I love that. It's wonderful. You should read that out.
I'm going to read it out. Okay, so the definition of singularity from the Chambers Dictionary. The fact, it's a noun, the fact or state of being singular, peculiarity, individuality, oddity, oneness, anything curious or remarkable, a point in space-time at which matter is compressed to an infinitely great density.
It's like a joke, a wonderful punchline, you know, the end, matter is compressed to an infinite density. I mean, look, we live in a world in which there are black holes. At the center of a black hole, all physical laws cease to operate. I mean, we know this. So what's going on there? What's happening in that? And you know, if we went to the center of a black hole and you popped out the other side, where would you be? The awful thing is, you'd probably be back here. You know, you've gone through the whole thing, you've gone through the black hole, you've done all this stuff. You think, oh Christ, it's the world, it's just the world. But at the same time, wouldn't that be wonderful? Because this is the most magical place. Our being here in this world is an extraordinary thing. It's only because we get used to it. We up to the age of 5 or 6, we're in a constant state of amazement. You know, we're looking around, you know, my parents, now they're, you know, my mother doesn't love me the way she used to when I was a baby, you know, my father is annoyed at me. I look at the clouds, look at the strange, and then we get used to it.
Yeah.
But the point of being an artist is to try to get back to that stage of being 6-year-old where you're amazed by the world.
That's interesting, because I was going to ask you about strangeness, you know, peculiarity, anything curious or remarkable. And, you know, in the singularities, you have near the beginning this description of a circus giraffe munching on spiky Irish gorse in a rented field. And the strangeness of that, and it's just an incidental thing, you know, the circus comes to stay, they rent the field, but a giraffe is eating the gorse.
Yes, but I saw that.
You saw it?
I live in Howth, and there used to be a circus that came, and they would park on the GAA pitch at the top of, halfway up the Howth Head. And I went for a walk one day with my dog, my poor dog. There were zebras, there was a giraffe, and the dog went, Christ, what's this, you know? Look, human life is utterly strange.
Utterly.
You know, you're taking your dog up to the GAA pitch and there's a giraffe.
I know, right? Yeah, and I mean, I had a quote I wrote down here, it's from page 27, so right near the beginning, but and I'm not sure which character says it, but it's dying is so strange a thing. So it's being alive and also dying. They're both strange things.
Oh, being alive is I mean, I wish I could have another life, because it's such fun. I mean, it's full of pain and full of horror and full of all kinds of dreadful things, but it's such, as I said at the beginning, it's such a wonderful adventure. There's a few lines from Rainer Maria Rilke, a great Czech German language poet, in the Duino Elegies, in the 9th elegy. He says, you know, why bother to be alive? You know, it's so brief. And he says, because being here is much, and because all this that's here, so fleeting, seems to acquire us and strangely concerns us, the most fleeting of all. That really expresses the whole thing. You know, being here is the strangest thing.
Yeah.
Elsewhere he says, you know, maybe we're here just for saying, bridge, tower, you know, ordinary things. He says, I would do it in German, but anyway, in English it's, but oh, for such saying, as never the things themselves hoped so intensely to be. That's what the artist does. An intensification of the sense of being in the world. And that's what art gives us. Art is not going to bring world peace or make your children more clever or make money for me or any of that stuff. Art is to give you an intensification of the sense of being alive. And what better thing could it do? Mm-hmm.
You really love language and words, and I notice that you have in your head words and phrases and sentences that you love. And reading your books, it's so clear that you take huge joy in finding the right words. Like, there are so many pleasurable sentences, phrases, even just pairs of words in this book. They're so enjoyable to read. I feel like I'm imagining you writing it and being really delighted when you find that to work. Am I right? No? No? Is there joy in the sentence working when the sentence works?
It's a good question. Sometimes, every now and then, very rarely, you know, there's a sense of when you hit your fingernail against a wine glass and you get that ping. Every now and then I get that, but that's very, very rare. Mostly I feel this could be so much better. Because everything is a failure. Every sentence is a failed sentence. But when I won that Spanish prize years ago, in my talk I said that the sentence is the greatest invention of humankind. I've said this many times in public, but it can't be said too often. It is our greatest invention. We declare love in the sentence. We declare war in the sentence. Our laws are graven in sentences, as your parents said. Without the sentence, we would not be a people. We would not be a civilization.
Yeah. I know you don't want to read anything from the book, but can I read a little bit that I think demonstrates that? Is that all right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, okay. John doesn't want to read. But I took such pleasure from some of the phrases and sentences in this book. I'll read a short bit, okay? On the lawn outside the window, the jet of an unassuming but busy little fountain is aswarm with tiny rainbows that quiver and flit like a hover of hummingbirds. Within, the two friends, the two something or others, are drinking gin inadvisedly, as Mordaunt supposes. Yet the part of him still capable of delights in the glassy blue glint of it, the teeming fizz, the lemony lemon, and lo, here's ice again, a cluster of miniature bergs joggling and bumping and cracking in voluptuous agony. Do you ever think, Anna said, lifting her unwieldy leg onto a low table in front of her and admiring her expensive shoe, that it all might mean something? What do you mean something, he asked suspiciously, unease resurgent in him. But he knew well what she was referring to, the fact of his having done away with a maid, a housemaid, a maid of the house, while going about the tricky business of stealing a painting from Anna's father's stately home, A tale already told elsewhere and in no need of rehearsing here. What sort of something? Anna was absently massaging her knee. It was the left one, or maybe it was the right. He glanced with a frown at the broad, tight, flesh-coloured elastic bandage she wears under her stocking. It makes him think again of his mother, something he would rather not do, not now or at any time. I felt then, she said, and I still feel, that it was all too, I don't know, too elaborate, not to have been part of some, what do you say, some pattern, you know? To his mild horror he did know. Had he not entertained the notion himself, or something like it? Of course he had. Even the nihilist believes in the nothing. Oh, but this was perilous, perilous ground, soft enough to sink in and be stuck fast, if not sucked under entirely. There had been so much of it, the coveted, valuable painting, and the inconvenient young domestic wallowing in her blood, then capture and trial and prison. The years, and here he was now in a cheerless hotel lounge on a day in summer, holding a tall glass between cold fingertips, hearing the bubbles zip and sharply pop, while his mind goggles in dismay at the possibility that what, oh, what does it matter what? For something to mean something, it would have to be directed by somebody like a bad stage play.
Thank you, my dear.
You have to admit that's fun to read. So I want to ask you about narrator. So the narrator here is really, like, it takes a while before you understand who's telling you the story, okay? And his name is JB, which is clearly a pun on John Banville.
No,
is it not?
No.
No, that's,
the
people
narrator,
are saying that.
No, the narrator is the god Hermes.
Aha.
He's directing the whole thing. I love the god Hermes. He's my favorite of all the Greek gods. He's a trickster. He's playful. He's very beautiful. He's agile. And he has, among his many tasks, is guiding the souls of the dead to the underworld. So he's a busy god. And he's the one who's, on the first page it says, "Who speaks here? I do, little God."
Yes.
The great ones having absconded. It is Hermes who's speaking.
Okay.
But I'm Hermes. I'm the god.
Well, right. So it's you, and it's the, so, and it's interesting because these things kind of flit in and out. And also, even in that piece that I just read, we have some of the aspects of the book that repeat, like saying something, then questioning the same something, saying it was like this, or was it like this, or saying it 3 times in 3 different ways. And it's to make us realize that there isn't one singularity, there is this multitudinous layers of reality going on all the time.
I mean, isn't that the wonderful thing about being alive? That nothing is singular, including ourselves. We imagine that we have a self that is unchanging from birth to the grave, but that's a total illusion. That's split religion, as Coleridge would say, the notion of the soul. But we are different in every moment. And that's wonderful. If we were the same at every moment, we would be robots. We are human beings, and human beings, the essence of being human being is change at every moment. We remake ourselves at every moment. The analogy I always use, I'm getting sick of it myself, I've said it so often, there's a man who gets up from his lover's bed and goes into the street and meets his worst enemy. He's 2 entirely different people. But that happens all the time. And as I say, isn't it wonderful?
There's something else in that section that I just read about, it's to do with the idea that unless something has been somehow written down or narrated, it may not have really happened. And there's this feeling in the book all along, I think it said in there, that as if it was directed in a play, that there's this idea of this omniscient controller of all of the multiplicities of everything, right? And also maybe the role of the writer is to capture it and write it down, or else it hasn't really happened, or it isn't really real. That's just something I felt when I was reading the book. I don't know how you feel about that idea.
Well, I mean, I'm the fat controller, I'm the guy directing Tommy the toy engine, or whatever it's called.
Tommy the Tank Engine. Yeah.
Tommy the Tank Engine. Yeah, I'm controlling the whole thing, and this is one of the the glories of being in contact with a work of art, whether it's a novel or a poem or a string quartet or a painting, is that the artist is in control. I mean, I was in Spain a few months ago, and I went again to see Velázquez's great painting, Las Meninas, which I think is one of the greatest works of art in Western art. But it is totally enigmatic. It stands there, it's a group portrait of the Infanta, the 6-year-old Margarita Teresa, and dwarves and dogs, and the painter himself is standing looking at us behind the easel. And he's looking at us and saying, do you think that you're going to solve the mystery of this work of art? No, you're not. And that's why we return again and again to works of art. Popular art, quote unquote, is used up quickly. But the great works maintain their mystery because they withhold themselves. If you read a great poem, if you listen to a great piece of music, look at a great picture, you do not solve it. You do not solve the mystery. The mystery persists. And that's, as I say, that's why we go back again and again and again. I can listen to Late Quartet by Beethoven. I mean, I must have, or the last Piano Sonata, the Opus 111. I've listened to that, I suppose, a couple of 100 times in my life. It's still totally mysterious to me. Gloriously mysterious. That's the great value of art, that it doesn't wear out. It's always, always new.
I love that phrase, it doesn't wear out. Is it true that you wanted to be a painter at one point? Or that you were a painter?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, when I was a teenager, I tried to be a painter, but I couldn't draw, and I had no sense of colour, and I had no draftsmanship. These are distinct disadvantages if you want to be a painter. But it did teach me to look at the world with a painterly eye. That was very valuable. And I still love the art of painting. I mean, I stand before something like Las Meninas or a Late Bonnard self-portrait in a state of amazement. How did he do this? How did he do this? It's done so. It seems slapdash, and yet the immensity of the thing is extraordinary.
Yeah. Does anybody have any...
Don't get me started on painting.
Or me. Does anybody have any questions? We do have a roving mic if anybody wants to ask a question. There's somebody over here in the middle. Yeah.
Did we have to end just on my failure as a
No, I'm going to ask you another good one in a minute, don't worry.
All right. Okay.
This could be a good question.
Hi there. You were mentioning your affinity for visual art. Obviously, we ended on that. I was interested, I know a number of people who I've talked to about this book also mentioned the fact that it has a very beautiful cover. And I guess I'm interested in whether you are interested in the process of cover design, whether you have any involvement in that, whether you see a cover and you're really happy with it, etc. So, yeah.
No. I long time ago, I determined not to have anything to do with the design of books. Design departments in publishing houses are very, very jealous, very careful of their rights, so I stay away from that.
People don't realise that the contract an author signs frequently says that they won't have any say over the cover at all.
Do they?
You can ask for meaningful engagement. You have to read your contract. But I will tell you, the painting on the jacket is by Harry Brioche, and the jacket design is by John Gall. So
it's funny. I think it's a wonderful design.
So do I. Yeah.
But the paperback, they're going to do without the giant full stop. I love the giant full stop, which is going to destroy the world.
Yeah.
But in the paperback, it's just going to be without that. And it works as well. You know.
Okay, because that's your dark hole there. We might have some more questions. I have some more as well. I'll ask another one now. It's back to questions about language choice and also naming people. So you've obviously really carefully chosen the name Godley and Adam, and there's a Helen in here. Do you spend a lot of time thinking about names, or do they come to you?
Oh no! I mean, yeah. When you've got the names, you're on the way.
Right.
And I always know, you know, people send me novels all the time, and I always know a bad novel when the names are wrong. Now, don't ask me how I know the names are wrong, but they just are. You know, I want to write back to the author to say, this guy is not called Fred, you know, he's called, you know, something else. He's called Aubrey. Or he's called Aubrey, he should be called Fred, you know. But getting the name right is very, very important.
And the names of places too. Like we have the University of Arcady, the Arcadian coastline here, and I loved that New York had a new name, and there's Arden House, you know, and it tied to, you know, there's a sentence here which and also this is a sort of self-consciousness of the narration as well. So it says, "Cops," funny word, as if it had let drop a letter, and of course the letter would be the letter "or," which would make it into corpse, and there's this thread always of death throughout the book, and I wrote down that the book is about death, fame, and money, and not maybe it is, and I'm interested because you know, most of my newsroom editors that I've ever worked with and journalists I've worked with have said that those are the things that sell newspapers: death, fame, and money.
Oh yes, yeah. But this this didn't sell very well, I'm afraid. A friend of mine said to me, "That book of yours didn't do very well, did it?" I said, "I would have been horrified if it had. It wasn't meant to do very well. Some works of art are made in order to be put into the world quietly and just sort of lie there like sleepers, as the spies say, you know, just and in time it will assert itself or it will die. But whoring after fame and money is the worst thing an artist can do."
Helen says she thought because the father was famous that life with the son would be exciting. So she married Adam Jr. so she could have an exciting life. She's a former actress. But didn't turn out like that.
My poor wife used to say to me, "You know, I do an awful lot of the work. You get your name on the book. I don't." And I say, "Yes, darling, but you've permeated every page." You say, "Yeah, well, yeah, okay."
Do we have any other questions? Somebody want to? We've got. If the mic is over that side, is it? Or are we gone?
You asked the question and I'll repeat it.
Oh, okay. Oh, here we go. Oh, it's going back there.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you so much. It's been an incredible experience listening to what you have to say. You mentioned that art is truth, and also you mentioned your great interest in technology and your fascination with that. So I just wondered about AI and art, and not so much, you know, is it good, is it bad, but just what does it say about ourselves, and yeah, just your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, I'm not interested in technology. Technology is to pure science as kitsch is to art. It's applied. AI, I don't know enough about. I'm told that, you know, the cleverest AI machine has the intelligence of a 6-year-old. And would you want to live in a world that's ruled by 6-year-olds? Don't think so. I certainly wouldn't. But you know, I mean, the so-called social media, these things have been a disaster for us, absolute disaster. And it looks like AI will be another disaster. So it does reconcile oneself to old age and the prospect of death.
I don't think AI could come up with some of the phrases in this book. I just found two more that I really enjoyed. So we have on page 67, the vasty deeps of the great Godleys utter uncommonsensical theories.
Yes, but I mean, language is, we must use it richly. We must keep it. Tyrants love simple, incoherent, imprecise language. They just love it. It's part of the job of the artist to keep language pure and rich. You know, people constantly complain to me. They say, "Oh, I had to go to the dictionary." I said, "Dictionary is a wonderful thing. Why? What are you complaining about going to the dictionary? Every time you look up a word in the dictionary, you see three or four above, three or four below, and you think, my God, I didn't know that meant that." But I had a horrifying experience. A few years ago, I was visiting a college in America, I won't say which one, and the English professor got me to come and talk to his class of students. And first of all, none of them had ever heard of Henry James. And then I mentioned a dictionary, and there was blank. And one of the kids said, "Yeah, I think my mum has one of those." This is a very great loss. The dependence on Professor Google, who is a wonderful tool, but the notion that Professor Google is right about everything. I mean, I have one of my ambitions before I die is write my autobiography, and every fact would be slightly wrong. You know, I grew up with a brother and a sister, so in my autobiographies, I'm going to have two brothers or two sisters. People come to me and say, "But Google says," and I said, no, Google's wrong. This is right.
But it'll be true, even if it's not the facts, right?
It'll be true. It won't be factual, but it will be true. Exactly. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you should say that. I was in Capri, on the island of Capri, a couple of weeks ago, and I was doing a little thing, an interview like this, but they asked me to write something before, and so I wrote about a trip I made to Greece way back in the 1960s. And afterwards, the first question was, is this true, what you told us? And I said, yeah, it's true. It's not factual, but it's true. So again, it's, the version I wrote of my first trip to Mykonos in 1960-something was true, but it wasn't factual.
Do we have any more questions near our mic? We've one there as well, and we've one here at the front.
This man wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
But if you ask, oh, good. Okay.
There we go. We got it.
Thanks. You mentioned the late works of Beethoven. You mentioned the late quartets and the late piano sonatas. So you're obviously well tuned into the world of music and art. So this is the question. You'd probably be annoyed, but thinking of your early work like Copernicus and Kepler, would you ever consider doing such a work on, say, Rembrandt or Beethoven, in that same kind of vein?
Oh, it's a good question.
Thank you.
No, because I don't understand music. Music to me is kind of magic. It's kind of alchemy. The notion that these simple marks on a white page can turn into this storm of beauty and transcendent noise. I mean, I wouldn't know how to tackle that. Well, Rembrandt.
You're not open to bribes.
Now you give me an idea.
There you go.
I'm a bit old to embark on that. But I know that no, it's a good question. I think that my writing those books based on Copernicus and Kepler, I think that was a wrong direction. I think that I should have used my imagination more. I should have made up stuff. My wife had her finger on when she said, "Fact is not truth." I became obsessed by fact. whereas I should have been doing imaginative things. So if I were to write about Rembrandt, I'd have to invent a Rembrandt-like figure. But again, I would be intimidated by it because I don't know how. I mean, well, all creativity comes from the same source. I mean, I know a couple of scientists, a couple of quantum scientists. They're brilliant, brilliant people. They won't accept the fact that, and I think it is a fact, that what I do and what they do comes from the same source. They take a different direction. They think they have rigor because they have mathematics. You know, they think that the mathematical formula is fixed for the ages. And I mentioned to them, you know, at the end of the 19th century, professors of physics were discouraging students from doing physics because we know everything. It's all been done. Then Einstein in 1905 came along and said, you know, I don't think that's quite the case. And then a whole new world opened up. But that had to be creative. Einstein himself said that if you have three equally plausible solutions to a problem, scientific problem, you choose the one that's most beautiful, and that will always be the one that's correct. The problem is he didn't define beauty. But one knows what he means. He means harmony and a sense of, again, that ping of, yeah. And I can, you know, I mean, I can't do mathematics, but if you look at the equations of James Clerk Maxwell, electromagnetism, they are exquisitely beautiful. Exquisitely beautiful. They're like a late Beethoven quartet or a Bach fugue. They're just so beautiful and so simple. So simple. This is one of my problems. I wish I could arrive at kind of simplicity. And maybe I'll do it in my declining years. But I'm afraid it won't be about Rembrandt. Sorry.
Oh dear. We're coming up on time now, so we might finish up. John is going to sign copies of his book in the room next door. I think all that remains for me is to thank you for your time and your very entertaining stories.
Thank you, my dear.
Thank you, everybody here.